Welcome to Performance Anxiety, everybody. This week's show features singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Janet LaBelle. If you ever wanted to know about mysterious lyrics, flying V's, getting a record deal in your teens, or playing guitar on roller skates, this episode is for you. Pick up her EP, I Only See You, everywhere you buy music, or get it from her website, janetlabelle.com. Follow her on social media, Janet LaBelle. Follow us at PerformanceANX on Twitter and Instagram. Our merch is at performanceanx.threadless.com. Subscribe, rate, and review. It definitely keeps us going. Without any further ado, Janet LaBelle.
Okay. Hey everyone, this is Janet LaBelle, and you're listening to Performance Anxiety Podcast. Well, I want to say one thing. I love the name of your show.
Thank you.
I actually was so excited to be on a show called Performance Anxiety. I'm fascinated by performance, and also I'm studying music therapy, so I'm very interested in psychology.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And
It's kind of funny because the show started out with me trying to, talking to people about how maybe they got over some of the performance anxiety, but it wasn't the main focus of the show. I kind of came up with the idea as almost like me getting over the anxiety of speaking to some people that I've really admired. Of
course.
And it's, I'll tell you a weird story about this. I guess this is how we'll break the ice of the show.
Okay.
I reached out to, I don't know if you're a fan of any David Lynch movies like Twin Peaks.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
I reached out to
Okay.
from Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, and she agreed to come on, and she never does this stuff. So I'm like, holy crap, this is fantastic! Why the hell is she doing it for me? And she's like, I love the idea, and she started sending me all these weird voice. We were just IMing, and she started recording messages and sending them to me. Really weird stuff.
Amazing.
I'm like, this is going to be a great episode because it's going to be so off the wall. Because the show's supposed to be humorous and lighthearted and all. Okay. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be a really interesting show. So I get her on, and we start talking, and she had eaten a pot brownie before the show.
Awesome. She
told me this as we start recording. I'm like, oh, God, this is going to get even weirder. So we start talking, and things get really weird, but it was a nice show.
You.
It was a fun show, and she said, oh, this was great. I had so much fun. So, all right, I'll let you know when the show's going to come out. You're in the queue. I've got a few people I've recorded before you, and I've got to edit and all that. So I will let you know. A couple of weeks later, I had this other artist on. And we're talking, and her music sounds a lot like something that would be in a David Lynch movie. Wow. So I told her that. I said, I said, that's one of the reasons I really like her music. And she's like, that's great. I love it. She's like, I'm a huge David Lynch fan. I said, well, that's so cool because I just had on. She's like, oh my God, I toured with her in 2012.
Whoa.
That's awesome. I will shoot a text and let her know that you're coming on. That way she can listen. And she's like, oh, that'd be great. So after the show, I sent a text, and she's like, I hate that bitch.
Wait,
oh my God. She's like, do not release my show. Don't put it on. Don't. So now I have an unreleased episode because she won't. Technically, she didn't sign anything. I could release it whenever the hell I want, but I don't want to get that reputation. So. Oh my gosh. So that one shall remain unreleased for a while.
That's pretty cool, though, that you have that, and you have that story about the whole experience, which makes it even more interesting, I think.
I'm the only person I know of that's been yelled at by and the thing that's weird is I'm like, hey, I had no idea. I'm sorry. And she's like, it's not your fault. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean I can release the show? So I have, after that, I haven't gotten back to her after that text. I'm just like, you know what? Forget it. Oh my gosh.
better to play it safe, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Lay low.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if I can do like a Patreon page or something and get subscribers, that can be like a bonus episode.
Yeah.
Give me money and I'll send you this whacked out show.
That's great.
And copies, maybe copies of the text messages she sent to me where she's cursing me out.
Oh my God, that's an incredible story.
So
I love Twin Peaks too, and David Lynch. I'm a
know.
huge fan, so that's
too.
incredible. You had that opportunity.
I wish I could share it was actually an interesting talk with her, and I wish I could share it, and I can't now. But I did learn something in doing research to speak with you. We have a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? We have that.
We do.
The bassist.
I might know what you're talking about. Yes, Kira Rossler?
Well, okay. Oh, well, maybe that's a different one.
That's a different connection we can talk about.
The way that I'm thinking of is your bassist for Avery. Nina and her husband, Ricky, are friends with a good friend of mine, Alf Bartone.
Whoa. Okay.
So
that's really interesting. Now I'm really close with Nina. Nina and I go way back because we played in a band together for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we're doing a reunion show this year. So we're playing with a lineup that I have not played with in 15 years. So
that's crazy.
It's crazy. So I'm going to see Nina. I'm going to see Ricky.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're doing two nights of a reunion show with some other New Jersey pop punk bands. So.
Where's that going to take place?
So the first night is at the Asbury Park Brewery on August 16th.
Okay, cool.
I think that show is sold out, but they booked another night at Jersey City the next day at FM Bar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so...
That's awesome.
That'll be happening in a few weeks. I still have to learn all of the songs that I wrote when I was like 14 years old. So it's pretty hilarious, but it's also it's a really incredible experience to relive that nostalgia.
Yes, because while you were in Avery, got signed when you were 16 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
I think
crazy.
I was 15 when I started writing for the album that we released on Small Records. It came out when I was 17. And actually, the record label owner is in a band called Jettison, and they're playing the show as well. So, and we're trying to get the label owner to sit in with us to do some.
Oh man!
So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, how did that happen? How did a group of teenage kids get signed?
Yeah, well, I think we were pretty lucky, but I would also say we worked really hard. Like I will say we really worked hard as kids, and I mean, to be honest, it was a lot more fun than school and doing homework. So maybe my grades took a little dive, suffered a bit, but I had a lot of fun back then for sure. But awesome. I guess the way it came about was, so I grew up playing piano, and I took some formal lessons, but was mostly just inspired to learn by writing songs and just exploring the piano. And I had written a few songs by the time I met Nina. And I also played drums. So I took up drums when I was 11 years old.
Wow.
This will show like what era I grew up in, but I was like really inspired by Hanson.
Oh, wow.
Remember like when Bop came out? Like,
yes.
I'm sorry, but that's...
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think that's like a super catchy track.
You know what? I got to make sure my wife's not in the room. Nobody's in the room. I actually liked that song when it came out.
You said, wait, say again?
I actually liked that song when it came out.
Right?
And I was in my mid-20s. Or so when it came out, so I couldn't be caught listening to it.
No, tricky times.
Yeah.
Right? Listening to it in secret, like somewhere, like looking in the car.
Oh yeah, like if I'm listening to the radio and it comes on, I'm like, oh, let's just see what comes on afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Let's suffer through this one.
Yeah, but you know what? By the time we find a station with something better, this will be over with anyway.
I love it. Well, actually, I was really inspired by the fact that the drummer was like, he was like 10 or 11. And
Yes.
that was around my age at the time. And I just thought it was so cool to see like a young kid playing drums and like really doing a great job with it. And
Yeah.
that was the whole era of boy bands where there were mostly vocalists, like Backstreet Boys, Sync, 98 Degrees. And I thought it was really cool that there were people, like there were kids playing their own instruments and like writing their own songs. You know, and I'd get in a lot of fights with, there was like a divide in the middle school, you know, it's like, what side are you on? Like,
Are you pro Hanson or anti Hanson?
Yeah, exactly. It was like an actual thing. But anyway, I bring that up because I started out playing drums. When I met Nina, I was a freshman in high school and she was a sophomore. And around that time, I was hanging out with some of the older kids and they were taking me to punk rock shows. And I, you know, got my first introduction to ska and pop punk. I listened to a lot of mixtapes and, you know, demo tapes of bands and discovered this whole, you know, underground New Jersey scene that was going on.
So where did you grow up in New Jersey?
Yeah, a small town called Madison.
Okay.
I went to Madison High School. That's where I met Nina.
Okay, because I lived in New Jersey twice. Once when I was really little, and then in Scotch Plains, and then I lived in Branchburg from fourth grade through when I went to Rochester for college. So
so you know all about.
I know all about New Jersey punk. Yeah. Me and my buddy Ed would go to New Brunswick all the time.
Yes, I went to Rutgers actually.
Okay, my brother went to Rutgers, and then half my family moved to Alabama, and he transferred to Alabama, and then I followed a year later. So, but before that, you know, I'd be going to house parties and going to the Melody
basement shows.
Yeah, going to the Melody Bar, watching Alf play when he was in Whale and Muskellunge, and then The Fire Still Burns, X Number 5. But then we would be watching the Bouncing Souls and Sticks and Stones.
It's incredible. I did go to the Melody Bar one time, and I think they shut it down like shortly after.
Yes,
so I caught it right at the tail end.
Yeah,
of that era. In Court Tavern. I don't know if you ever.
Yes. Oh my God. I think I actually went to the Court more often than the Melody. And my buddy Alf would play the Melody all the time. But yeah, I would definitely go to the Court. Yeah. So actually, I saw a really cool band there. It's really weird. A band called Eve's Plum. And they were really cool. They had the singer, Colleen Fitzpatrick, went on after Eve's Plum put out 2 albums and then split up, she became an artist called Vitamin C.
Oh, yes.
So you know that.
Wasn't that the graduation song?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That was huge.
But before that, she was in a band called Eve Plum, which were kind of a poppy alternative.
Sure.
Maybe not so much punk, but more along the lines of, and this was like early 90s. So, you know, not Soundgarden-y, but, you know, more alternative sounding. But I remember seeing them I believe it was at the Court.
That's incredible.
So
yeah, see, I feel like Jersey has some good output there.
It does. It's so underrated as a music producer.
Yeah.
You know, you think of Jersey, think of Springsteen, and that's like it.
Right. That's pretty much what most people think of. And then there's Bon Jovi, and then there's a divide on that too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of Team Jovi, but
I'm
on that.
You know what? When those the first few albums were really big, like Slippery and Wet and all that was, I was in, I think, middle school around that time, and that was another one. I was like, you know what? I like a couple songs, but I can't admit it because I'm walking around high school and middle school wearing Megadeth shirts and stuff. I can't be seen with a Bon Jovi cassette, which is
all the repressed musical memories.
And I'm confessing them and spewing them out now. So
no, see, it feels good, right?
It does.
Like, it actually feels really good to go on a show and say, yeah, like Hanson inspired me, like because people had strong opinions back then.
Oh my
I thought
gosh,
that was great.
It's funny because I've got 3 kids and they have really wide-ranging musical tastes, and the great thing is they're open about it. And I don't know what has changed between when I was a kid and when them being a kid, but it was like in the 80s, mid to late 80s, if I, I'm wearing my heavy metal shirts and all, and if I came in with a Bon Jovi anything, I'd probably get punched in the face.
Oh, yeah. See, that's like a very fearful space to be in, right?
It is.
Like, that's interesting. You bring up a good question about kids and like music, like and access to music and access to like just more things, and that people can self-produce now. So that's something I'm interested in.
All right, so we're gonna be bouncing around all over the place with this.
Totally.
Self-producing. Now, you've put out several EPs over the past few years. Are you self-producing those or parts of those, or how are you creating these beautiful songs, by the way?
Thank you.
They're lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. I take a really large part in the productions, and every EP or single or whatever I've done, I've had a different role in. And I've also worked with a musical collaborator since after the band Avery, the band I was in when I was younger. Our last drummer and we went on to start. It was my songs and his production techniques. He was in his young 20s now. That I'm talking, this is like 10 years ago.
Right.
But we started working together on collaborations, and I mean, it's great because I felt like we always had sort of the same vision for things.
Okay.
And so he's helped co-produce several of my EPs, and then I actually was just in LA recording this past weekend and doing some songs and co-producing with this guy named Scott Baseman. He's a producer in Hollywood.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. I just love saying that. He's in Hollywood. Like, I don't know, like you could be doing whatever in Hollywood.
I know.
Cool. Just hanging on the street.
I'll tell you another secret real quick. So I don't mean to interrupt your story, but I do another podcast, and it's sports related. And my two co-hosts are out in Hollywood. So I can say, my podcast is based out in Hollywood. But my buddy Tommy, he's a producer for Comedy Central, and my other friend Eric, his brother's an actor out there. His brother, I don't know if you ever watched the show Smallville, but his brother played Lex Luthor.
Nice.
So that's how I kind of push this thing. Yeah, I got Lex Luthor's brother and a producer from Comedy Central, and we all get together and talk sports over Skype.
That's amazing. That's great. That's awesome. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Now I'll be honest with you. It's a little more blue than this show is.
Okay.
So it's language is a little coarser.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, feel free, be yourself.
It's more on their part than mine. I will be 100% honest.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
But all right, so I interrupted your story about Hollywood.
Fine. Yeah, no. So I like working out of a variety of studios. I love, I've recorded probably half of my stuff on the West Coast, and then I record here in Brooklyn where I live. I've worked at Studio G with Tony Mamoni.
Oh, cool.
You know him? Yeah, he's a bass player. And he's awesome to work with, a great producer and engineer. And then I released a track recently called "I Only See You," and I did a video with that. It's on my latest EP, and that was actually just a self-produced bedroom recording. That I would wait forever. You've always been my saddest song, and you never sang along. Your eyes are open wide. And that was the first time I ever released anything like that. Usually I, put all my resources into production and
right.
And do it up and do the songs justice. And like, I would always really take like painstaking efforts to get things right. And I ended up recording this demo that I just couldn't really reproduce the same organic feeling of, I basically just wrote this song and then just pressed record and recorded it just like a few minutes after writing it. And then I felt like I couldn't replicate that again. So I never really touched it, but I got it mastered and included in the EP. So that was a totally solo. I'm not much for like recording technology, although I am learning. I've recorded a lot of my stuff mostly analog. So
there you go.
I work with a lot of people who are well versed in like tape and splicing and all sorts of things like that. So
that's awesome.
That's a whole art form, and
it is, and it's becoming lost.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like the retro sound and feel is kind of in, and there's a lot of record labels and Daptone Records out here. They have
Daptone's awesome.
And Bushwick and they do a lot of the analog stuff, and it's just. I think for me, the recording process also really informs the output and informs like what happens in the studio, because you have very limited takes and you have very limited, you can't really edit that much. So it's not like super saturated with auto tune and like all sorts of things. It's like, it's a pretty raw and organic process. And that's why I've gravitated towards analog. But in recent years, I've kind of combined like a hybrid. I'm like, okay, it's a little maybe like more cost effective, or I have more flexibility, or, just sort of over the years, just sort of developing, my music and seeing what works in terms of recording medium. But I love doing my own arrangements, harmonies. In my last EP, I did all of the, there's all these keyboard arrangements that are done with a Mellotron. So that was at Studio G with Tony. He has this Mellotron, and it was my first time being able to sit down and be like, oh, I could be the string section here. And it actually, like, the samples really sound like strings or,
That's awesome.
So I got to play around with layering, and now I'm, like, saving my pennies so I can afford maybe a Mellotron and, like, my own home studio rig, because I'm amazed. Like, a lot of my friends have home recording studio. I mean, you must have your own home recording gear as well.
Here, let's see if I can. I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah,
it's just a little soundboard, and then my laptop.
Yep. See, but that's really like, I'm learning, like, you don't need much. Like, you need some few essentials. Yeah. And you can really do so much. I mean, my little song that I released was recorded on GarageBand through the laptop mic. So anything is probably better than that. Like, I could probably invest a little in, like, a cheap mic or something like that. And maybe, like, step it up a notch. But
it depends what sound you want.
That's, like, my next step of what I'm trying to start doing,
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask is that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is you using a lot of older technology. A lot of your songs have an older soul and R&B sound to them. Where does that come from? Because that's nothing like the pop punk that I was listening to a little bit earlier. Although I will tell you that I was amazed by how complex the songs from Avery seem to be.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It wasn't just, typical power pop or pop punk. It was keyboards and different layers in the songs. I was impressed.
Yeah, I remember at the time when I was writing, it was, I will say it was very cool to grow up in a scene, like having like sort of, it's this conversation of music. And I was constantly listening to the stuff going on around me all the time. Like, I'd go out, see bands, like, okay, I was just always taking mental notes of like what was happening, what I responded to emotionally. Okay. I listened to a lot of emo music. Okay. A lot of the songs came from my diary when I was like 14 or 15. So like, I was young and had a motive, and also the fact like there weren't that many females out there. There was like a lot of masculine energy out there,
That's
like
very true.
in music. And I was like, I'm this like sensitive creature, but I mean, I'll own it. And I will say, like, I really used music as my outlet at that time. And I kind of drew on the influences that were happening around me. And then also just drawing on my influences of like what I grew up with, which were just more like Beach Boys, like, Blondie. I got to play with Jimmy Destry. That's actually our Kira connection, but it's very loose, which we'll
have to touch on that.
We'll touch on that. But yeah, I tried to sort of make things my own. I was listening to Elton John and like more ballads and. Stuff like that. So
I think, and I don't know, listeners may not agree with me, but you might. I think that's almost very particular to growing up in the New Jersey, New York area.
Yeah.
Because in that area, growing up, we got exposed to, I think, a lot more classic rock and roll, older rock and roll.
Sure.
I think, R&B, soul, rock from the 50s and 60s, it played a larger role in the music scene there than almost any place else in the country. Because it's still, you go anywhere in New Jersey and you'll hear the doo-wop bands or some of the 60s bands. You go to California, maybe more psychedelic, maybe more beach.
Yeah, more like surf rock.
Yeah.
Which I love too.
Oh, yeah. But the classic R&B and soul that I hear in the music that you've released over the past few years, I think it's more prevalent in the Northeast, specifically in Jersey and New York. And I would say you and I are probably 10 to 15 years apart in age, at least. But I think it sounds to me like we almost grew up on the same music.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because I've only grown up in New Jersey, and sadly, I know nothing else. Wish I had more of a variety, of a background. But at the same time, like I was very much influenced by the music that my parents played in the house when I grew up, and really just. I don't know. I guess personally, I just really respond to music. I always have since I was a little kid. And I remember listening to Fleetwood Mac in the kitchen of, my childhood home. And just like that song Everywhere, like I Want to Be With You Everywhere.
Yes.
And just letting loose, just dancing, my whatever, like my little whatever shoes, my rhinestone moccasins, those were my shoes. I just remember going crazy to that kind of music.
Oh, Fleetwood Mac is amazing. Fleetwood Mac is one of those bands that I grew to appreciate more as I got older. Because when I was growing up, my mom loved Fleetwood Mac, and it's mom's music. I'm not going to listen to Fleetwood Mac, but.
Again, so much judgment on our music.
I know.
Right? No, it's so funny, though.
But
it's great.
As I grew up, I started listening to more and more. And Lindsey Buckingham, in my opinion, is probably the most underrated guitarist of all time. Mm-hmm. And a buddy of mine, Jordan, from the band Blinker the Star, got to actually play with Lindsey several times. He's on a couple of Blinker the Star albums. And so if you like Lindsey Buckingham, check out Blinker the Star, because he plays on a couple of their albums.
Yeah, I will. That's great.
I keep interrupting you with I'm sorry.
It's great. No, I mean, I think that's one of my favorite things about these conversations is like just talking about music and like the origins of things, which I think your podcast does a really good job with. Like,
thank you.
I was looking through like who you're interviewing. That's actually how I came across that you had interviewed Kira. So Kira had actually worked with the producer and my collaborator, Evan Taylor. He did this album that was all Black Flag covers. Gimme. And Black Flag, Des is from New Jersey. So like there's these connections there.
Right, yeah.
As well. And Evan and I grew up, we went to the same high school as well. So, which is, so there's a lot of creatives in Jersey working on things he had Kira sing on the Gimme 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 album. He also had Jimmy Destry playing keyboards from Blondie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and actually after they did that album, he was in touch with Jimmy about doing his solo stuff. Because Jimmy, I don't know if you remember, but in the 80s, he released a solo album.
No, I don't remember that.
Heart on the Wall. And that was his solo album, and he never did tour with it. So I became his backing member with Evan. Evan played keyboards. I played as a multi-instrumentalist, so I actually played drums on some of the shows. I opened on drums, I played keyboards, I sang backup, I played guitar, and I got to sing songs that, inspired me in high school, like Debbie Harry's parts. I mean, I just felt like I should be doing this, but I had that opportunity, and it was pretty incredible. So.
That's amazing. Coincidentally, Kira just emailed me today because we're going to do another episode. So you've got your voice is very soulful in the EPs that you've done, and the lyrics, everything is very mature. I was just really blown away by how it sounded like stuff that I would listen to, driving around with my dad. We used to restore old cars, and we would go to car shows, and they'd play, this Blue Eyed Soul and it, music, the lyrics, the vocals, everything. It kind of brings me back to that time in my life, and I love it.
That's great. I love that you said that, and you're sort of drawing on this like nostalgic time, which I feel like that's exactly what I, like the music of the 50s and 60s, a lot of girl groups, like all my influence, not all, but as I talked about the New Jersey pop punk scene, which I don't think actually is very present in my solo work at all, but
I don't hear it.
Helped me as a songwriter for sure. But yeah, no, I don't really. Yeah, it's not very closely aligned, but my solo work was really an opportunity to channel some of those influences where I want to write music that like I want to hear, which is pretty much that stuff. So then I kind of have to go back in time and think about like what it is about that music that really speaks to me, and what I think it is just this very, like, it's very, like, straightforward. A lot of times the music is, like, conversation to another person, like a letter to someone, or, it's just an expression of, like, kind of direct and, like, timeless communication. I think that's kind of the key word and element is, like, this, like, timeless. There's a lot of themes that really inspire me. It's, and I'm trying to get out of this just to challenge myself as an artist, but like I write a lot of love songs, and I actually recorded over the weekend a song that it sounds like a straight up love song, but I swear that it has to do with other things. But like, when I listen back, I'm like, nobody's going to see that parallel. I'm like, but for me, it was like a huge deal. I was like, 'cause I knew this is not a love song, but it still sounds like it. Like there's still like, it's like I'm singing to like someone, but it's different. It's like I wrote a song about, like finding a different state of mind and how like beautiful and inspiring that can be. But I wrote it like a love letter to that state of mind. So,
well, that's really cool, though.
I can't get away from it. But I'm really trying. I think it's really important to have challenges, whether I ever get over this or not. I mean, it's all about the process. I'm finding like it.
They're artists. Their entire career is writing love songs, and they do great at it. So. Yeah,
there's a million ways to say like I love you. Why don't you love me?
Yeah. Okay, so that brings up a question. Yeah. On your latest EP, you have a song called "I Can't Believe You Did That." That sounds like very vague lyrics to a very specific incident.
I love that you're bringing it up because, a song that really inspired me was I Can't Go For That.
I love Hall & Oates. I love Hall & Oates. And
love Hall & Oates too.
That was one band that I didn't care who knew that I liked.
Yeah,
because
forget it.
I'm walking around in my Megadeth shirt, but I will have that Hall & Oates album out, and everybody can go suck an egg because I love it.
Exactly. It's shameless.
Exactly.
It's Hall & Oates. They have this song, I Can't Go For That. And I listen to it and I love this song, and it cracks me up that they don't name, what is it? What is it that you keep saying something happened and it kind of lends itself to this imagination and I could think of maybe what it was. Is my version different than another person's? So when I wrote I Can't Believe You Did That, I did write it about a specific unnameable thing.
Oh, no. All right, well, you cut that one off already.
The mystery continues. Maybe in the sequel.
Yeah.
You'll hear all about it. Just talk about that.
We'll just pick out those kind of songs. I Can't Believe You Did That. I Can't Go For That. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Won't do that. I'm not doing that.
See, we'll just do we'll just do an episode about that.
It's all about that. It's it's up to interpretation. It's something for everyone.
Exactly.
It's a motto.
Enter your own heartbreak here.
Insert your own terrible situation. Anything traumatic, just put it right there. This is a group therapy session we're going to embark on together. So, but yeah, it's funny because it definitely crossed my mind. I'm I think being specific in lyrics is also very helpful. And I also think, there's a lot of lyricists that I admire that I'm not as great with this, but they'll be very specific about the time and describing the place. And it's so specific. But you can totally channel that or channel the emotions that the imagery evokes. And I love that. That's another challenge for me as a songwriter. I love that. Some of my songs have that, but it's not my go-to style of writing. So I guess, I Can't Go For That. It definitely crossed my wait, that wasn't my song. I didn't write it. Look at me. I mean, I'll take the royalty check.
Well, no kidding.
Forget it.
Man.
But yeah, I can't believe you did that. That I still need to, get that song out there a bit. But yeah, it really is about something that I think it's left up to the imagination of people can insert their own sort of imaginative implications there.
All right. Well, since I'm not
creative people.
Yeah, exactly. Since you're not going to tell me what it's about, everybody has to insert their own issues.
Insert issues here.
So who are your influences? Because you obviously have, your pop punk influences with Avery, but you have a completely different set of influences when you're doing your solo stuff. Sure.
So, I'll go maybe back in time and work forward.
And I will tell you that I heard your cover of Leslie Gore. You don't own me. Yeah. That's so good.
I love Leslie Gore. I mean, so she has that album, the album with It's My Party, and I'll Cry If I Want To. So, this is a classic example of an album that I just, love these lyrics. It's really straightforward. She's actually, in this album, I think she was really young. She must have been, 16, or she was a young kid, right. I think, when it was released.
I think you're right.
But this album, she has several songs that sort of touch on this party scene about Judy and Johnny, if you're familiar with
yes. Yes.
Judy and Johnny just walk through the door like a king and their queen. So you have this scene of Judy and Johnny at the party, and then later there's another song, it's Judy's turn to cry, and then she lets Judy have it in this song. So this is a conversation of sorts.
That's
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on, touching on the same themes sort of over and over again. There's a lot of crying. There's a lot of tears on this album. And it just keeps coming up over and over again.
That
and
could be a show. Songs with sequels.
Yes, I think so. I mean, one of the things that like I gravitate towards in terms of like what I like to see in other artists, and maybe it's that sense of familiarity. It's when an artist sort of like keeps coming back to the same themes. It's the same. I'm really obsessed with this one painter, Edvard Munch. Like I don't really know that much about painting in general. I'm not going to say I'm an art historian
right.
at all. But I remember going to the MoMA and seeing a series of his works where he had this like red-haired lady, like this muse that just showed up over and over and over again. And then he'd have like this contrast of like light and dark, and like a lantern or a moon or something, just over and over again. And I just remember like seeing that and just feeling like the symbols just made me feel like I knew him. And maybe I'm like way off and just like looking into all the wrong ways. But I felt like when I saw an artist sort of like touching on the same things, I could feel like I felt more connected. It felt more relatable, and there was a context. So I do gravitate towards artists that sort of bring up a lot of the same things. I think I do that a bit in my work a little bit. So, but yeah, so Leslie Gore is definitely a huge influence. I love her work. I love Melanie Safka. She wrote Brand New Key.
Yes.
Look What They Did to My Song. She's just an incredible songwriter, and just like a powerful like female force. I got into her in high school. It was a friend's dad listened to her, and actually like I got into a lot of music through like friends' dads. Actually, Rachel, it's like it's really weird, right? Rachel Sweet was another new wave artist. She's an interesting hybrid between like her stuff came out in the late 70s, early 80s, and she's got this punk kind of edge, but also music was getting a little more like refined and poppy. But her first stuff that she had that came out was like very much like punk rock that I was listening to. Trying to think of the name of her first album, but she has these songs like Fool's Gold and
Fool's Gold 2.
Spellbound is a song. I've actually covered some of her stuff too. I've covered live a lot of these artists that I'm mentioning, Melanie, Leslie, and Rachel Sweet as well. But then also, like I would say, the Beach Boys. They're just a huge influence that I can't ignore. Mostly just because I fell in love with harmony for the first time, and trying to figure that out. Like, what is going on?
Oh well, Brian Wilson's undeniable genius.
Expansive. Oh yeah, and he's a huge influence of mine. And he's
a huge influence on me, just wanting to lay in bed for 3 years.
Me too, or like get like a sand pit under my piano, because that was something that he had. And I think of that. I took up surfing about, I guess it was 6 years ago now, and I always come home and have like sand in my apartment. So like I'm kind of close. I'm like grain by grain. If I just don't vacuum my apartment for a couple more years, like we might have somewhat of that situation. Although I won't have quite the same musical genius, but I will have a lot of sand.
Well, that's something. That's still a connection.
And inspiration. So, yeah. So I really, like those are sort of my classic influences. And I'll just say like, because I could talk for a long time about, all the various artists that I love. I'm really into French pop music and like the artists that Serge Gainsbourg produced. I really love Françoise Hardy. And I recently saw Jane Birkin perform at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, wow.
And that was one of the most incredible shows I've seen with the New York Philharmonic.
Wow.
So it was incredible. And really, yeah. So I gravitate towards those artists, and I'd say like more currently, I really love Jenny Lewis from Rilo Kiley.
Oh yeah.
She's just a really incredible songwriter. And she always tells stories and has very vivid lyrics. I always listen to her work and say like, oh wow, yeah, she's got a great storytelling style that I'm in love with. And I have goals. I think it's important to have goals. But for now, I gravitate towards like writing songs that I feel I can connect to, and like stuff that I would want to hear. But you kind of nailed it. Like you picked up on a lot of the old like soul sort of classic influences, which I definitely feel like I really respond to as a listener.
Well, and I did, because I was listening to the music. I'm like, this is so good. I'm really, really enjoying this. So it was.
Thank you for saying that.
Oh, well, it's the truth. So that's my pleasure to say it. Now, I do have a question.
Sure.
Did see some videos. And one of the ones that I don't know how the hell you did this, losing all the way in a roller rink, playing guitar on roller skates, because I just sat there and fascinated, because I remember going to roller rinks, and if I tried to do that, I would break my ass.
I mean, let's just say there were a couple close calls in that situation. Like, I'm really glad I didn't injure myself severely, because we actually we were playing live, so that's actually a live recording.
1, 2, 3, 4. When I'm talking to you, I don't care what you say. It was a losing war, I was losing now. Hey, when I won't ask about you.
So my friend, who's also the guitarist in that band, in that lineup, and he had some recording equipment, and we rigged it up, and I had this videographer who I also love, Chris Carlone. He filmed it for us, and the roller rink was so great. And this is what's awesome about going back to places in your hometown. This wasn't exactly my hometown, but it's the town one over, Florham Park. So
Okay.
Thank you, Florham Park Roller Rink, if you're listening, because I know you are.
Of course.
Of course, naturally you're listening. But they were just so accommodating. I was like, I had this fantasy of like, I was like, I just want to play guitar on roller skates, like this classic like gig that no one was at, yeah. Like the traditional. Like, I think Josie and the Pussycats opens that way. I think they're at a bowling alley or something, and they, like, do this epic performance. And
wow, you might be right.
And no one's in there, basically. And it's like, the directing and the camera work is, like, phenomenal. And you're like, are they at Madison Square Garden? And then it's like, you hear pins cracking in the background. But I had this, like, fantasy of, like, just doing it in, like, this kind of open, like, public space. And I had many birthday parties. I had one birthday party at the Florham Park Roller Rink. I think I was in 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade. I can't remember. But I went to a lot of parties there. And I remember feeling like, kind of an awkward time as a kid, because, like, they had this light up old school sign where it would light up and say couples skate, like it'd say other things like backward skate, forward skate. Like
that sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Oh, totally.
Backward skate now.
Backward skate now. Okay, kids. Like, okay, we are 12. I'm
skating. I'm clutching on the rail for dear life, trying to go forward. I can't.
Exactly. I just remember like the high emotions that, for me, I felt like as a young preteen being at a roller skating rink, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and like try to like, I don't know, like own that experience and like channel all this like awkwardness. So I mean, I tried to be as smooth as possible. Like I said, I didn't fall, although I almost tripped over a few cables like on a couple occasions. And we were actually like live playing the song, so that definitely presented its challenges. But I will say that was like a really fun video to film, and the people there were super nice to let us take a few hours to like, it's like a different kind of birthday party
to fulfill your desire to own that.
I was actually really surprised they let me do it. I don't know. It was just, I live in New York. It's a tough tough world over here. It's nice to go out to Jersey and people are like, oh yeah, you want to throw us like a few dollars? Like we'll do, like, yeah, you can like, we ordered pizza. Like it really was like reliving my 6th grade birthday party. Like, I'm like, is the slushy maker on? That was the only disappointment.
Oh man,
it was not on. I could not turn my tongue blue for the video.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
That would have been really authentic, but
that would have been
anyway. So yeah, it was fun.
So you've released several EPs now. Is there a plan to do a full length anytime?
Yeah, I always go back and forth with, what is the best way. I mean, it would just be amazing if I could just like write all the time and put out full length albums, but it's harder. It just costs a little bit more these days. Like as an independent artist, I feel like I sort of just like putting things out as they're streaming in. I feel like that is something that lately I'm going to be focusing more on. But then again, I have a lot of songs sort of on the back burner, like waiting to be on an album. So to be honest, I wish I had a more clear-cut focus and answer. Like I just recorded 2 songs over last weekend, like I mentioned, and I'm just trying to figure out maybe a release plan for them, or those 2. They're actually interesting tracks because they're very stylized. Like I do like to channel my influences, but in a way where I make them, sort of modern and more my own. And then in these tracks, I really was kind of creating almost like caricatures of the styles that I love, but in a way that, I wanted to like pay homage to them, not like, not try to make it like a ridiculous version of like doo-wop or something like that.
Right.
Like, I had like very specific ideas of how I wanted things to sort of sound and go. And then of course the recording process, which was, we did an analog, or it's a digital tape recorder. It's like only 8 tracks. So it sort of like limits you and in a really good way and makes you like focus in. So a lot of things that were unexpected came up out of the tracks, and also working with producer Scott Baseman. He had a lot of great ideas. So I'm going to wait for these tracks to be mixed, and I can actually see them turning into like a larger work of more stylized tracks that are like very specific. But I might just release them as they are and then keep developing my other songs, my other, demos and things that I've been working on. But yeah, eventually, I think the goal for me is like, if I release music, I'm like, okay, good job. Because like I feel like I sit on projects for a really long time. I think that's another thing that I want to get better at is like you know what, it like that's fine enough. Like I mentioned before, like I loved the title of your podcast, Performance Anxiety, because I feel like I definitely can relate to like the anxiety of like, is this track good enough, or like, did I do it justice, or like do exactly what I wanted? And what I'm realizing now in my mid 30s, and like now I've been doing this for a while, I like stopped caring as much, which is great. Not in a way that things are like being sacrificed, but like, I'm trying to enjoy the process so much more, and just, be like, okay, well, if I want to do a different version of that, I'll release it later, or like just get it out there. Just like get it out there and like just really enjoy what that feels like, and just sort of like ease up on the attachment. And that's been my that's another like thing that I'm always constantly working on. So
well, and the weird state that the music industry is in right now kind of lends itself to doing that. You can release one song if you want to, and not have to have it worried about, well, now I've got that single out, it's got to be part of this album that's coming out within a couple of months.
Right. Like in the time that I was growing up and buying CDs and records, like that was so important for an artist to be releasing the full album, because those album sales were going to fund the tours, and they were going to, you know, like the album sale itself was so important. And in this day we live in like a streaming culture, you know, that a lot of it is like streaming an artist or like maybe buying the single. And like, don't get me wrong, I love when people download my album, like, or buy a physical copy at a show like that. I mean, that I think other artists would agree with me. Like that is like amazing. That really supports the art, but it's harder to get the most out of that. Like, you know, like the old days. So, you know, the old days of music. So
it is, it's kind of
all about
flipped.
adapting.
Yeah. And it's kind of flipped where you were saying, you know, selling the album, you know, supports your tour. Now it's touring is what's got to support you creating more music.
Right. Exactly.
Because of streaming for a large part of that.
Right, exactly. So there's other ways to be creative, and I sort of, you know, I actually really take to the single model because I feel like a lot of my songs just kind of come like maybe spontaneously, or they can kind of stand on their own as like something that I just want to get out, get out there, and I think that's a really good model too. And then, you know, and I've played in my mind with some ideas of, I also play ukulele. So thinking about like, all right, just like a solid ukulele album, or like, you know, something that really just has this like cohesion to it where it makes a lot of sense. But otherwise sometimes I feel a little scattered, you know, I'm just like, I want to dabble in this style or do this. And I'm a multi-instrumentalist. So I like writing on different instruments, which I think brings out a different quality. I always channel something different when I'm playing a different instrument. So I feel like the single model sort of works for me in a way.
Well, you mentioned the uke. I did see a picture of you playing a badass looking Gibson Flying V.
Oh yeah. You know, I sold that guitar.
Oh.
Yeah, but you know, that's okay. We had a good run. That's not the only guitars that I've ever sold.
That's what I'm going to insert for I Can't Believe You Did That. I
can't believe you sold your Gibson. Actually, it's an Epiphone, which is, you know, it's part of Gibson, but it's not like a true Gibson. It's basically a reissue guitar from the 1950s. It was a 1950, which isn't that really cool? Like, I love looking at the history of guitars.
Oh,
like,
so do I.
That guitar, I look at that, I'm like, oh, that's like a hair metal guitar. I'm like, that's 80s guitar. No, that guitar was like a rock and roll guitar, that model. And I just love it. And I bought it for several reasons. I actually at the time was shopping for a hollow body because I really love country sounds. I love like reverb, just like a deep sound to it. And I played a lot of guitars, and surprisingly, that was one I played, and it doesn't have a hollow body. It's very much solid and in a flying V shape. And it actually like gave me a really nice tone. So this is for the guitar enthusiasts out there. Like, it's great. You know, I sold it to someone on Craigslist who was like very thrilled about it and like played it. I was like, I mean, it's a great guitar. I have so many instruments that sometimes for me, it's like, it's part of the process. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get rid of this one and see what else I can find.
Well, I can understand that. You know, you get a lot of people get inspiration when they get a new sound. You get a new instrument, it's a brand new sound.
Actually, that sounds very familiar to me. Yeah, I definitely. I went through a phase. It was, my bank account is hurting.
That can influence it too.
Yeah, but like I definitely feel very much inspired, just like tactilely and like and also just by like what I hear. So physically playing it, but also like the sounds of instruments. Like when I played that Mellotron, I had that same experience where I'm like, this is inspiring so much from me creatively that I feel it's worth the investment.
Yeah.
What's like a few $1,000s? Yeah. Well, fine. Just a drop in the bucket. So, I'm saving my pennies for things. And, but part of that is like kind of selling the old gear and, figuring out what phase you're in and like what inspires you. And there's more cost ways to find inspiration, but it doesn't hurt. So.
Well, Janet, I've kept you for about an hour now, so I thank you so much for coming on with me and spending so much time with me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Where can everybody find you online, social media, and where can they buy your music?
So you can find me on Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud. I feel like I have most of the music channels. If I'm missing anyone, any medium, you can contact me.
Yeah.
let me know. I feel like I'm really behind on social media. I try to keep up with it as much as possible.
Feeling.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's one of those things. That's also a work in progress. So any tips, any business tips, I'll accept. Marketing strategies, what have you, like, please get at me. But yeah, I have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Like, you can message me.
Is it all at Janet LaBelle?
And whatnot. Yeah, it's just Janet LaBelle. Yeah. And,
awesome.
You can find my music on iTunes, and yeah, there might be some physical copies floating around on the internet if you're into that.
I am very much into that, so I'm going to have to get some.
I can mail you a copy, whatever you want. I have a few.
Oh, damn. I will be texting you my address because...
Yeah, no, please. I will send you definitely a copy. I will send you everything I got.
Awesome. See, I'm of the age where if I can't touch it, if I can't feel it, I don't own it.
Yes. If you can't feel it, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
But yeah, send me your address. I'm glad to send you a copy. So.
Oh, man, I love it. I appreciate that so much.
Of course. That's awesome. Well, thank you again for having me as your guest. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you for being on. This is so much fun. I really do appreciate you coming on, spending all this time with me.
Of course. Well, hopefully we'll do something in the future. We'll think of a cool topic.
When